Drone warfare has defined the Ukraine-Russia conflict, with Ukraine's makeshift technology challenging Russia's superior forces. Russian bridges, critical strategic infrastructure, are prime targets. In 2025, a strike by 2,000 Ukrainian scrap drones on Russian bridges shifted the war's balance, stunning the world. Below is the account of this confrontation, from an ingenious assault to its unforeseen global fallout. On a foggy morning in 2025, 2,000 Ukrainian scrap drones, cobbled together from recycled parts and armed with explosive payloads, surged toward key Russian bridges from Crimea to Rostov. Flying low to evade radar, the drones struck simultaneously, obliterating billion-dollar concrete spans in a storm of explosions. Debris flew like a tempest, alarms blaring across Russia as traffic ground to a halt. Russian forces scrambled to intercept, but the sheer volume overwhelmed defenses, turning the battleground into a cauldron of fire, with black smoke choking the sky, heralding a brutal infrastructure war. Russia responded with relentless fury, deploying S-500 air defenses to shoot down hundreds of drones, but the swarm's size left some bridges in ruins. Su-57 jets roared into the fray, engaging the drones in a dazzling aerial clash, missiles streaking through the sky in radiant bursts. On the ground, Russian armored units raced to protect remaining bridges, but Ukraine unleashed more drones from hidden bases, triggering cascading explosions. Collapsing bridges clogged rivers, shaking Russia's economy. Smoke and flames spread, transforming strategic zones into a hellscape where every moment pulsed with danger. The conflict surged into infrastructure and cyberspeed at breakneck speed. Russian hackers targeted Ukraine's drone command systems, disrupting controls and causing crashes. Ukraine retaliated by crippling Russian power plants near the border, using viruses to seize grid control. In the skies, drone swarms collided in massive fireballs, illuminating the chaos below. Russian hypersonic missiles aimed at Ukrainian bases were thwarted by advanced defenses, debris raining like a storm. The war expanded as Ukraine's allies supplied components, turning the border into a multi-layered flashpoint where infrastructure and firepower fused in turmoil. Russia launched a massive ground offensive, aiming to seize Ukrainian border cities and cut drone supply lines. T-14 tanks rolled in, sparking ferocious urban battles. Ukraine countered with lightning ambushes, using scrap drones to incinerate tank convoys. A colossal explosion demolished a critical Russian bridge, triggering floods and displacing thousands. Neighboring nations were drawn in, with Poland and Romania bolstering borders. The global economy reeled as oil prices soared from disrupted routes, and satellite imagery showed vast regions shrouded in smoke, marking a savage phase of warfare unseen before. The attack's fallout sparked a global supply chain crisis as Russia retaliated by blockading Baltic shipping routes, crippling European trade. Nations reliant on Russian energy scrambled for scarce supplies, forging emergency pacts. Autonomous robots cleared wrecked zones, while international relief convoys delivered aid to Ukraine under fire. Russia and Ukraine, facing economic collapse, were forced into ceasefire talks, but cybercriminal groups rose from the chaos, exploiting vulnerabilities. The crisis temporarily halted the war, but shattered supply chains and emerging threats signaled a chaotic future. Tensions between the U.S. and China in the South China Sea have simmered for years, with naval and air confrontations heating up the region. U.S. freedom of navigation operations often spark disputes, while China reinforces its sovereignty claims with provocative actions. In 2025, a swift U.S. strike on 3 Chinese missile bases shifted the balance, stunning the world. Below is the account of this conflict, from a maritime provocation to an outcome that left everyone reeling. On an August morning in 2025, the waters near Scarborough Shoal in the South China Sea boiled with tension. A Chinese destroyer closed in on the USS Higgins, a U.S. warship conducting a freedom of navigation patrol. The Chinese ship broadcast warnings demanding the Higgins depart, echoing Beijing's territorial claims. The U.S. vessel held its course, radar locked on target, the atmosphere electric. Suddenly, the Chinese destroyer fired a warning missile that skimmed past the Higgins, triggering a small explosion on the water's surface. Alarms blared, smoke rose, and Scarborough Shoal became a flashpoint ready to ignite. The provocation sparked a fierce U.S. response. The Higgins activated its defense systems, shooting down an anti-ship drone launched by China. F-35 jets from a nearby U.S. carrier scrambled, clashing with Chinese J-20 fighters in brutal dogfights. Missiles streaked across the sky, a Chinese drone exploding and sending a towering geyser skyward. Chinese naval ships encircled, firing water cannons and flares, but the U.S. deployed submarines, launching torpedoes that rocked the enemy fleet. Smoke and flames spread, turning the waters into a hellish battlefield, with relentless explosions churning the sea. The conflict escalated when China launched ballistic missiles from the mainland. The U.S. retaliated with a lightning campaign. In just 14 minutes, cruise missiles from submarines and stealth aircraft obliterated 3 Chinese missile bases along the coast. Explosions shook the mainland, black smoke blotting out the sky, sparking panic in nearby cities. China's air defenses tried to intercept, but the attack's speed overwhelmed them, debris raining down like a storm. China's allies mobilized forces, but the U.S. had shifted the balance, with satellite imagery showing the bases reduced to rubble. China struck back, targeting U.S. bases in Guam and the Philippines, shaking the Pacific. The U.S. deployed a larger fleet, using laser defense systems to intercept missiles. Ferocious air battles spread, with fighters from both sides falling like leaves. The global economy reeled as South China Sea trade routes stalled, oil tankers trapped in the war zone. Explosions and black smoke choked the region, with aerial imagery revealing coastal cities engulfed in flames, marking a brutal phase of warfare. The strike's fallout forced both sides to confront massive losses. Neighboring nations scrambled to prevent further escalation, with relief ships delivering supplies to affected areas. The U.S. and China paused hostilities for urgent negotiations, but insurgent groups exploited the chaos to rise. The crisis temporarily curbed the war, but new tensions and lingering threats signaled an unstable future.
Tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela have boiled over oil disputes and military posturing in the Caribbean. U.S. patrols often face Venezuelan provocations, while Venezuela's alliances with global powers heighten the stakes. In 2025, a Venezuelan attack on a U.S. asset ignited a massive U.S. retaliation, reshaping regional dynamics and shocking the world. Below is the account of this confrontation, from a daring provocation to its explosive global fallout.
On a sweltering afternoon in 2025, Venezuelan forces launched a surprise assault on a U.S. oil platform off the coast of Guyana, seizing it with commandos dropped from helicopters. The platform erupted in chaos as Venezuelan troops overpowered guards, alarms blaring across the waves. U.S. radar detected the incursion, but Venezuelan fighter jets swooped in, firing warning shots at approaching U.S. patrol boats. The atmosphere crackled with electricity as Venezuelan submarines surfaced, their missiles locked on. The U.S. Navy scrambled, but the bold move turned the Caribbean into a tinderbox, ready to detonate with unimaginable force.
The seizure sparked a furious U.S. response. F-35 jets roared from a carrier strike group, engaging Venezuelan fighters in a whirlwind dogfight over the platform. Missiles streaked through the sky, one Venezuelan jet exploding in a fireball that lit up the horizon. U.S. destroyers closed in, their guns pounding Venezuelan positions, waves churning from the blasts. Venezuelan submarines fired torpedoes, rocking a U.S. frigate and sending plumes of water skyward. Marines rappelled onto the platform, reclaiming it in brutal close-quarters combat amid gunfire and screams. Smoke billowed as oil slicks caught fire, transforming the sea into a raging inferno where every wave hid death.
The conflict surged into cyberspace with blinding speed. Venezuelan hackers crippled U.S. communication networks, disrupting fleet coordination. The U.S. countered, jamming Venezuelan radar and seizing control of their missile systems. In the skies, swarms of drones clashed, exploding in mid-air firestorms that illuminated the panic below. Hypersonic missiles from Venezuelan silos targeted U.S. bases in Puerto Rico, but laser defenses vaporized them in flashes of light. The war expanded as allies scrambled jets, turning the Caribbean into a multinational maelstrom where digital strikes and aerial fury merged in chaos.
The escalation peaked when Venezuela launched ballistic missiles at U.S. territories. In retaliation, the U.S. unleashed 1,200 cruise missiles from submarines and bombers, obliterating Venezuelan military installations in just minutes. The barrage turned coastal bases into craters of flame, explosions echoing like thunder across the continent. Venezuelan defenses crumbled under the onslaught, debris flying as command centers vanished in fireballs. Global markets plunged as oil prices skyrocketed, and satellite feeds showed entire regions engulfed in smoke, marking a devastating phase of warfare that left no room for mercy.
The strike's aftermath triggered a regional refugee crisis. Destroyed infrastructure displaced millions, flooding borders with desperate Venezuelans seeking safety in Colombia and Brazil. Camps overflowed, diseases spreading amid chaos as international aid struggled to keep up. The U.S. and Venezuela, facing humanitarian disaster, paused hostilities for emergency relief, but insurgent groups rose, seizing control of lawless zones. Autonomous drones patrolled refugee routes, while relief convoys delivered supplies under fire. The crisis temporarily curbed the war, but swelling tensions and persistent threats signaled an unstable future.
The Caribbean has long been a hotspot for tensions between the U.S. and Venezuela, with military standoffs and oil disputes heating the region. U.S. Navy patrols frequently face provocations from Venezuela, while Venezuela bolsters its air force to assert control. In 2025, a reckless flyby by Venezuelan F-16 jets near a U.S. Navy ship ignited a ferocious conflict, triggering a cascade of events that shook the region. Below is the account of this confrontation, from a daring aerial act to an outcome that stunned the world.
On a stormy night in 2025, the Caribbean waters near Venezuela's coast churned with danger. Two Venezuelan F-16 jets, armed with air-to-ship missiles, swooped low, just hundreds of meters from the USS Farragut, a U.S. destroyer on routine patrol monitoring oil transport routes. The Venezuelan pilots broadcast warnings, demanding the Farragut leave what Caracas claimed as their airspace. The U.S. ship held its course, radar sweeping relentlessly, the atmosphere electric. Suddenly, an F-16 dove at breakneck speed, nearly grazing the ship's deck, rattling the vessel and sparking panic. A warning missile from the F-16 skimmed past, exploding on the sea's surface, sending a towering geyser skyward. Alarms screamed, searchlights pierced the darkness, and the Caribbean became a powder keg ready to erupt. The flyby sparked an immediate response. The USS Farragut activated its air defenses, shooting down a Venezuelan surveillance drone tracking the ship. U.S. F-35 jets from Puerto Rico scrambled, engaging the F-16s in a brutal dogfight over the Caribbean sky. Air-to-air missiles streaked through the night. One F-16 shot down, crashing into the sea in a blazing fireball. Venezuelan warships emerged from the horizon, firing flares and water cannons to intimidate the Farragut. The U.S. deployed attack submarines, launching torpedoes that rocked a Venezuelan ship. Black smoke and flames spread, relentless explosions churning the waters, transforming the region into a chaotic battlefield where every second teetered on disaster. The conflict surged into the electronic realm with lightning speed. Venezuelan electronic warfare units deployed jammers, paralyzing the Farragut's radar and communications. The U.S. retaliated with a massive electronic assault, disabling Venezuela's air control systems in Caracas. U.S. satellite jamming signals scrambled the F-16 fleet, causing some jets to lose navigation and crash into the sea. Meanwhile, U.S. hackers breached Venezuela's military networks, seizing control of coastal missile launchers. In the skies, combat drones from both sides clashed in fiery storms, explosions lighting up the night. The Farragut's laser defense system intercepted most Venezuelan missiles, but debris rained down like a meteor shower, igniting fires across the sea. The war turned the Caribbean into a multi-layered flashpoint where technology and firepower merged in chaos.
The conflict erupted when Venezuela, backed by regional allies, launched ballistic missiles at U.S. bases in Colombia and Puerto Rico. The U.S. responded with a lightning strike, using B-21 stealth bombers to demolish Venezuelan military airfields near Caracas. Flames and smoke billowed from the flattened bases, sparking panic across the region. Other Caribbean nations were drawn to the brink, with Colombian and Brazilian warships joining patrols to contain the spread. The regional economy reeled as oil transport routes stalled, tankers trapped in the war zone. Satellite imagery revealed massive fires and black smoke clouds, marking an unprecedented phase of warfare in the Caribbean. The conflict's fallout triggered a Caribbean regional crisis. Disrupted oil routes sent global energy prices soaring, causing fuel shortages in the Americas and Europe. Neighboring nations held emergency summits to halt escalation, deploying relief teams to aid affected cities. Autonomous robots cleaned up debris and oil spills at sea, while international special forces hunted insurgent groups exploiting the chaos to rise. The U.S. and Venezuela, facing economic and international pressure, negotiated a sudden ceasefire. But the Caribbean waters remained littered with wreckage, and regional criminal groups emerged from the turmoil. The crisis temporarily curbed the war, but new tensions and persistent threats signaled an unstable future.